Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Yampidang dittang sutam mutang viññātaṃ pattam pariyesitaṃ anuvicharitang manasa tampina upadiyissāmi naca metang nisitaṃ viññānaṃ bhavissatīti evante gahapati sikkitabbanti. Dear Dhamma friends, so as you all can remember, yesterday we started discussing Anathapindikovada Sutta, which is available in Majjhima Nikaya, and interestingly it's Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Ananda approach the dying householder Anathapindika. At that time they are talking the gist of the Dhamma. So actually during the discussion, Venerable Sariputta of course seems to have understood that the householder Anathapindika doesn't have much time, and he is on the edge of death, and he is going through utter suffering and severe pains, and he himself explained that. And without talking this and that, Venerable Sariputta directly explained the gist of Dhamma, the crux of the unattached nature of the mind. So basically that becomes kind of a reminder for householders Anathapindika. Now yesterday we discussed certain aspects. Actually there are 10 ways that Venerable Sariputta explained this to householder Anathapindika. Actually yesterday we discussed based on certain criteria where he started not to attach eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind, and then forms, sounds, or sight, sounds, smells, tastes, tangibles and mind objects, and then because of their combination happens the what you call the respective consciousness, like eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness and mind consciousness. And because of that continuation things are happening and things are getting basically available, and then as a group they are started to work. As a result of that the respective contact happens. That means eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact and the mind contact. Now because of the contact, the next result is the corresponding feeling. That means the feeling happens at the eye, feelings happen at the ear, feelings happen at the nose, feelings happen at the tongue, feelings happen at the body, and feelings happening at the mind. So interestingly, so all these areas are now fairly covered and the corresponding instructions were given. And now Venerable Sariputta, without stopping there, he is going further and he mentioned na patavi dhatung upadiyissāmi naca me patavi dhatu nissitaṃ viññānaṃ bhavissatīti evante gahapati sikkitabbaṃ. Now this really means not merely in terms of the element wise, rather we can think of all the physical components, all the physical things, whatever having this earth element. And then similarly he mentioned about apo dhatu, that means the water element, tejo dhatu, heat element, and the vayo, the air element, and then the akasa, the space element, viññāna, the consciousness element. Now this is another categorization. Now in a way, so Venerable Sariputta is giving many different doses, we can say, many different medicines, we can say. First of all, he explained in terms of the faculties and their corresponding external faculties, sense bases. And now he is talking about the elements. So you know, Buddha sometimes explained many different ways what we call as a person. Maybe as elements, maybe as sense bases, maybe as 5 khandhas. So it's like different teachings are there. Now Venerable Sariputta touching one after the other, explaining in one way, explaining in another way, explaining in another way. So likewise he is broadening his explanation. Now here, another categorization of all our experience, the whole world, animate and inanimate, is these 6 elements. The 4 great elements, they are represented in the physical side. Then the space represents the absence of 4 elements. And then the all mental phenomena are explained as the consciousness element. So these are called as Cha Dhatu, means the 6 elements. So Venerable Sariputta highlights, do not attach to any of these elements. And do not allow your consciousness to establish on any of these elements. In other terms, we can say the priority is here based on the elements, and maybe even if we consider the physical side, so as you are dying, there may be various thoughts might occur to you with respect to your belongings. Because Anathapindika is someone who is a rich merchant, who may had a lot of wealth, belongings, and if he get a kind of an idea about his belongings, maybe his properties, maybe his wealth, money, debtors or creditors, maybe bank loans. So different things, if those things are coming to his mind, then he'll be in trouble. And if he did trading on another something, maybe gems or any kind of physical things. I mean, now when Venerable Sariputta is touching all these great elements, earth, water, fire, air, so that indicates all the physical sides, whatever we encounter, are included. So our experience is broadening here and touching each and every aspects of our physical encountering with these 4 elements. And beyond that, even the space element and the consciousness element. So the advice is not to attach to any of these. You have any alarm clock? The clock is missing. So likewise, basically, Venerable Sariputta is now continuing his sermon and touching each and every aspect, and the advice is given, you got to be restrained so that your mind, or rather the consciousness, is not attached, is not established anywhere. None of these elements are used, and none of these are allowed to attach, and you have to be mindful that you are not allowing your mind to attach to any of these things. Now, rather than staying there, now Venerable Sariputta further explained the 5 khandhas. That means that na rupang upadesami, na cha me rupa nisitang viññānam bhavisati iti, evante gahapati sikkhitabbam. Na cha vedana upadesami, na cha me vedana nisitang viññānam bhavisati iti, evante gahapati sikkhitabbam. Na sanya upadesami, na cha me sanya nisitang viññānam bhavisati iti, evante gahapati sikkhitabbam. Na sankharang upadesami, na sankhara nisitang viññānam bhavisati iti, evante gahapati sikkhitabbam. Na viññānam upadesami, na cha me viññāna nisitang viññānam bhavisati iti, evante gahapati sikkhitabbam. Now you can see he is touching the aggregates as well. Now different ways. Sometimes we understand about our experience. One way is about the elements, another way is the aggregates, another way is each and every sense base and their corresponding consciousness, contact, feeling. Now, very much like he is giving a lesson with all corresponding components. Now, if we consider the rupa, the forms, that again have the 4 great elements, and if we consider the feelings, now we are talking about various feelings. Now, so this householder Anathapindika is going through a lot of painful feelings. Now, that painful feelings are included in the teaching And Venerable Sariputta's advice is not to attach to any of these painful feelings. And various sanya. Now suppose he remembers someone. Because before Anathapindika, as far as I can remember, he had another daughter. She is beyond Anathapindika. I mean, she is actually a once returner, Sakadagami. And she passed away before Anathapindika. And assume that, I mean, Anathapindika remembers her, or Anathapindika get kind of a mental image of whatever the property, whatever the belonging, whatever the relative. So this may appear as a mental image in the mind. Different sanya, different perceptions, different signs. So the advice is not to cling to any of these, not to take them personally, not to sort of prepare a self, not to have kind of an idea of individual. They are merely perceptions, sanya, and not allowing your consciousness to establish on any of these sanya, signs, perceptions. And sankhara, those are also included. Say you are getting certain thoughts, a particular thought occur to you. What I am going to do, or say, what would be the next moment, or what will happen to these properties after my death. So different thoughts can happen in the mind, but if you are feeding them, if you are strengthening them, so they may start to grow. So once they are grown, you may start to overthink. So the consciousness get enough food to establish, enough nutrient to establish. Now just a single thought may not be enough, but if you are promoting it, if you are sort of highlighting it, if you are feeding it, then it is growing, and you are now allowing consciousness to slowly rooted there, slowly establish there. Now, I mean, sometimes we get a glimpse, just a just a minute of thought, maybe a minute sign. So those may not be enough for consciousness to fairly strongly establish. I mean, they may come and go, simply it will pass away, and you are simply maintaining kind of an unattached, dispassionate kind of mind. So then it may not affect your mind to establish. It may not, the consciousness may not get enough strength to establish there, because it quickly passed away, quickly disappeared. So, but on the other hand, if you give enough strength, if you give enough value, if you give enough importance to any of these thoughts, and if you are thinking again and again thinking, then it can become growing. Ultimately, your mind get established there, consciousness get established there. Now you are in a thinking world, proliferation. So likewise, all the 5 aggregates are mentioned here after this, and there again, when Sariputta highlights, your restrainment should be not to attach to any of these aggregates, not allowing your consciousness to depend on any of these aggregates. And then further he mentioned, na akasananchayatanang upadissami nacha me akasananchayatana nisitang viññānaṁ bhavissatīti evaṁ te gahapati sikkitabba. Now akasananchayatana is the first immaterial jhana, the arupa jhana. Then Venerable Sariputta explained about the second one, viññānaṁchayatana, third one akinchanyayatana, fourth one neva saññā nasanyāyatana. Now basically we can presume that all jhanas are included here. First, second, third, fourth material jhana, and fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth arupa jhana, even though the sutta has the latter 4. So basically you can see not even jhanas are advised to attach. Now typically we might think, okay, we have done a lot of practice, with lot of effort I have attained jhana. Suppose that you are able to attain first jhana. How about trying to maintain that during the deathbed? Probably that might have done by the Brahmas, that might have caused them to be reborn in the Brahma realm. But the advice of Sariputta seems against that. He didn't appreciate absorb to any of the jhanas. So his advice is even to the arupa jhana, those are more subtle than the rupa jhana. So Venerable Sariputta advised Anathapindika not to have consciousness based on any of these arupa jhana. That means he should not get absorbed to any of the jhanas. So jhanas are not in that sense taken as the Nibbana. Jhanas are not Nibbana. So they are, according to Buddha's teaching, they are simply taken as a kind of a tranquility or kind of a sublime abidings in this very life, a temporary abiding, a blissful state of the mind, temporary. They are not the Nibbana. So Venerable Sariputta therefore mentioned that not to attach to any of these jhanas and don't allow your consciousness to establish based on any of these jhanas. Very interesting point. And then the next one. Na idalokang upadesami nacha me idaloka nisitang viññānam bhavissatīti. Evante gahapati sikkhitāpa. That means about this world. Now, different ways Venerable Sariputta is trying to address. Now, when we consider this world, so many things are there. So there are overlappings between these advices. Whatever the way the listener understand now is capable of passing the message. And now idaloka means this world. And similarly he touched paraloka. Now suppose you are getting some kind of an inclination about the next world. I am going to become a god. I am going to become a celestial being. So that is how the terminology that gati nimitta, kamma nimitta and all these things are coming to our mind. So we attach to that. Suppose while you are dying, a beautiful chariot is shown into you. A beautiful celestial beings are there inviting you to come. So you are attached to that. If you are attached to that, that is paralokang. So your mind get hooked up there. So that becomes the gati nimitta. Whatever nimitta appear in your mind can be a source, can be a seed where you are promoting and you get deluded and you are feeding and ultimately mind or the consciousness get established. And the last section actually, is what I have taken as the topic. Yampidan dittang sutam mutang viññātam pattam pariyesitang anuvicharitam manasa tampina upadesami nachame tang nisitang viññānam bhavissatīti evante gahapati sikkhitāpa. Now again, whole spectrum is included. Dittang, whatever you have seen. Sutang, whatever you have heard. Mutang, whatever you have sensed. Viññātang, whatever you have cognized. Pattang, whatever you have encountered. Pariyesitang, whatever you have sought out. Anuvicharitam manasa, whatever you have examined by the mind. Anything excluded? Nothing excluded. So if you consider all these ways that how he delivered the message, how he passed the Dhamma, so everything is included. Nothing is exempted. So that indicates there is no place worthy of attached. There's another interesting statement available in the what you call Chula Tanha Sanke Sutta. Sabbe Dhamma Nalang Abhinivesaya. Given an advice to Sakka by the Buddha. So nothing is worthy of going into. After attachment, you are fully established and you remain there. You go inside, adhering into. Nothing is worthy of adhering into. Sabbe dhamma nalang abhinivesaya. It's another way of putting it. Now here, Venerable Sariputta give a detailed explanation. Whatever you have seen, whatever you have heard, whatever you have sensed, whatever you have cognized, whatever you have encountered, whatever you have sought after, whatever you have examined by mind are not worthy of attached. Don't allow your mind to get established, consciousness to get established on any of these places. That should be that should be your restrainment. So this is kind of a restrainment. So you have to train the mind. And telling at the last moment, only few moments left. So that's why, yesterday we discussed. So, if we are trying to tell this message to a non-practitioner, he can't simply do it. So this is, Anathapindika is a wise person, he's a noble person, he's a stream winner. So the message is well understood. So after this was said, what happened? So Anathapindika started crying. He started crying. Now, this Ananda, Venerable Ananda was listening to the whole sermon. He is just accompanying Venerable Sariputta. And he thought that Anathapindika can't do it. And his mind is still attached. So that could be the reason that he is crying. I can't do it. Why are you telling me? So that could be the reason. So then, kind of a hint, Venerable Ananda is asking, Oliyasi ko tvangahapati, sansidasi ko tvangahapati. That means, is your mind foundering? Is your mind sinking to something? So kind of a hint that, are you still sinking to something? Are you still attached to something? Is that the reason that you are crying? Then, very interesting answer Anathapindika is giving. He said, no. My mind is not foundering, my mind is not sinking. But even though so long I have associated Buddha, even though so long I have associated other Sangha, including Venerable Sariputta, I have never heard this Dhamma. So you can imagine, so he is a frequent visitor to the monastery and he is frequently visiting, discussing with Buddha, Venerable Sariputta and other monks. But seems like Venerable Sariputta waited till the last moment to deliver this sermon. So that is the reason Anathapindika is crying. Then interestingly, Venerable Sariputta is mentioning, so these kinds of Dhamma we are not teaching to lay people. But these are taught to monks who have some caliber to understand it. So therefore we are not delivering this kind of Dhamma to lay people. And then Anathapindika is telling, please preach these kind of Dhamma to lay people. There are still lay people who can understand it. There are lay people, without hearing this kind of Dhamma, they may waste their life. So you can see, in terms of their time, say during the Buddha's time, there are many monks, all are geared to attain Nibbana, all are well concentrated, well aimed, have proper goal. So telling them not to attach to anything, not allowing consciousness to establish any place is really, we can understand. So they may understand, what Buddha is talking, what Venerable Sariputta is talking. But on the other hand, other lay people, say they are doing, agriculture or any other business. So if we are simply telling this kind of a deep sermon, so they may not understand. So that's true. But interesting point is Venerable householder Anathapindika's comment that there are still be very intelligent householders not hearing this kind of Dhamma. So they are that skill or their possibility of attaining this kind of a situation would be hindered, would be missed. So therefore he make a kind of an invitation, please preach this kind of deep Dhamma even to lay people. So probably you can remember, I mean, we just passed Poson. You know, this, how this Venerable Mahinda came to Sri Lanka. So before he preached, he did a kind of a examination to Devanampitissa, King Devanampitissa. So he asked various questions, and he understood he's an intelligent person. So King Devanampitissa answered them properly, and there are some little kind of a psychological problems, and he answered them properly. So that indicate the king has a great intelligence. And if you consider the householder Chitta Gahapati, so he is actually a non-returner, Anagami. He is a householder. And even there are certain suttas that monks are asking questions from Chitta. There is one sutta called Patama Kama Bhu Sutta, where Venerable Chitta approached one Venerable called Kama Bhu. And this Venerable is asking a question from Chitta about a particular verse, and that Venerable couldn't understand its meaning. So Chitta is the one giving the commentary to that particular verse delivered by Buddha. So actually Chitta, before Venerable Kamabhu explain, or rather tell that verse, Chitta himself didn't understand, have never heard it from the Buddha. When Venerable Kamabhu recite that verse, the question from Chitta is that, is it something that Buddha has preached? And then Venerable Kamabhu say, yes, it is preached by the Buddha. And then he thought about it, and then he has given the best explanation about that verse. Very interesting explanation. That is where Ekaro comes as Sati. Nelango Seta Pachado. So likewise, that is the verse mentioned about an Arahant. So the explanation is given by Chitta. Chitta is a householder. So likewise, there are many instances available in the Sutta Pitaka. There are many intelligent householders answering great questions or having great discussions, asking different deep aspects of the Dhamma. So that indicates, people are quite intelligent. Either they may be monks or either they may be lay people. So in a way, householder Anathapindika's request is really worthy, because that is why, talking this kind of sutta is not a waste of time. And some of you may understand what I am talking, because we all are practitioners and we all are trying to have at least a temporary state of mind which is not attached to anything. And we can understand, we can even predict. So what would be the result if mind is not attached to anything? And say, for example, when we consider Satipatthana Sutta, again and again Buddha highlights Anisitocha viharati nachakinchi loke upaditi. So you just keep your mind without associating anything. Now this advice is not something new. From different terms, using different terminology, Buddha has highlighted it again and again. But Venerable Sariputta put it beautifully, so that very precisely he is telling, don't attach to this, don't attach to this, don't attach to this, don't attach to this. Kind of a very detailed explanation is given, so that no exemption is available. Everywhere, everything is mentioned, animate or inanimate thing is mentioned, nothing worthy of attachment. Now there's a question come. If Anathapindika could do it, what would happen to him? Assume that he could able to do it 100%. Not established. Consciousness is not established. What would happen? Sorry? He becomes Arahant. Good, yeah. But interesting point is, so now after delivering the sermon, Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Ananda returns. Immediately after that, Householder Anathapindika dies. Has he become an arahant? No. He was reborn in the Tussila realm. Why is that? As a celestial being. Now, answer comes in a different sutta. Actually, not really answering this question, but we can get some insight from another sutta. There is Chetana Sutta, where Buddha mentioned, Yancha bhikkave cheteti, yancha pakappeti, yancha anuseti, arambana metang hoti viññānassa titiya. That means, if there is some kind of a chetana, kind of a volition, some kind of an intention is available in your mind, that is enough for consciousness to establish. Suppose that you are thinking about something, chetana. Now if the volition is available, you say you want to do something. So you are thinking again and again, so your mind is geared towards that great intention. You are putting enough energy to that. Your mind is fairly diverted, inclined towards that intention. So that means consciousness rooted there, established there. So if there is any kind of chetana, intention, that's it, you are trapped. In other terms. Yancha bhikkave cheteti. Yancha pakappeti. That means proliferation. Again and again, without kind of a particular direction, still thinking is going on. Thinking about past, thinking about future, again thinking about past, again thinking about future, jumping here and there, some proliferation is going there. Pakappeti, prakalpana. The thought processes are going on and on, that is enough. Again caught. Yancha pakappeti. What is the remaining one? Anuseti. So if there is a latent tendency which is still not uprooted, if that is available, even that is sufficient for the consciousness to establish. Now suppose, so we as practitioners, and we are not arahants, and we have what? Chetana. So if we are putting any kind of an intention during our death moment, so that would be enough and we get caught. If our mind gets restless and we are thinking here this way, that way, and some thought processes are going on, still that is enough. Assume that you are a skillful practitioner, you are quite able to maintain mind free from any intention. Very good. And you are able to maintain mind free from any thought even. So that means no pakalpana, no proliferation at all. But still the problem is we haven't completely take out the latent tendencies. Asavas, anusayas, we couldn't completely take out. So there are other things, actually other situations are also there which is contrary to this situation. There is one venerable called Channa, and he encountered severe sickness, and he is a practitioner going through a lot of practice, but not an arahant yet. And now he is thinking of committing suicide because the pain is so severe. Now the intention or his idea is now spread among the Sangha. Venerable Channa is going through this much of suffering and he want to commit suicide. And interestingly, Venerable Sariputta got the message and he immediately come. You can look at the mentality of Venerable Sariputta, you see. He is the general of Dhamma, next to Buddha, and he has great compassion towards the others. So he immediately come to Channa and he is telling, Channa, don't do it. If you don't have a caretaker, I'll do it. I can become your caretaker. If you don't have medicine, I can find medicine for you. If you don't have enough requisites, I can provide it to you. I can find them to you. So don't commit suicide. So you can imagine what the kind of a mentality as an arahant Venerable Sariputta was having. And Channa is telling Bhante, I have everything. I have caretakers, I have food, I have other requisites, I have medicine. Everything is available, but my pain is so severe. Unbearable. So even at that moment, I think Venerable Sariputta is going with Venerable Chunda. So Chunda is giving the crux of the teaching. Like here in the Anathapindikovada Sutta, there Venerable Chunda is telling differently. Nissitasa chalitang, anisitasa chalitang natti, chalite asadit. No. About the unassociated state of the mind. Differently, I mean, I can't exactly remember it now. Probably it may come to my mind. So anyway, after giving that sermon, so they both are returning. What happened next? So Chanda cut his throat or something. Interestingly, later, Venerable Sariputta also didn't know. I mean, he asked. Now the news came that Channa passed away. Venerable Channa passed away. And Sariputta and other monks are asking from Buddha, what was his next birth? What is the answer? So Buddha mentioned he passed away without establishing consciousness at any place. He has become an arhat before passing away. Can we do that? Now these are some contrary points. You see, I mean, now even though the complete sermon is delivered to Anathapindika, he couldn't do it. The same kind of sermon is delivered to Venerable Chanda, he could do it. Somehow he did it. So Anathapindika, by the way, became a celestial being, and some aesthetic aspect is also there. Now he is reborn in the in the Tussal realm. Now in that Cetana Sutta, that is also explained. So yancha bhikkave ceteti, yancha pakappeti, yancha anuseti, arammane me tang hoti viññānassa tithiya, arammane sati patittha viññānassa hoti. If there is any kind of arammana, if there is any kind of object to the mind, then consciousness get established. Tang patittite viññāne, I think Tasmin patittite viññāne virulhe, I think punabbhavapi nibbatti hoti. So that means when the consciousness is established, deeply rooted and grown, next birth is possible. Punabbhava abhinibbatti. Next birth, rebirth is possible. So that is what has happened to Anathapindika. So he may had, definitely he is a Sotapanna, he had Anusaya, Asava, latent tendencies are available. And even though the gist of the Dhamma is given, probably he might have tried to keep the mind unestablished. But unfortunately, depending on the available tendencies, so he got reborn as a celestial being. Now he is a young god, young celestial being. And after becoming a young god, young celestial being, now he is reflecting back. Now he see the beautiful Jetanarama filled with Buddha and the Sangha. He become delighted. He is so happy to see Buddha and the Sangha residing Jetanarama, built by whom? Built by him. And then he immediately returned back to see the Buddha during the night. So after, with lot of splendor, he approached the Buddha, he pay respect to Buddha, and he is mentioning very interesting verses. I am not going to tell everything. Isahitang jetavanang isi sangha nisevitang avutta dhamma rajena piti sanjananam mama. So this is the first verse. So he mentioned, so this the sagely Sangha is now associating the Jetavanarama, this particular monastery. Avutta Dhamma Rajena, the king of the Dhamma, is there. Piti Sanjananam Mama. By seeing it, I become so delightful. I become so happy. So likewise, certain things are mentioned. And interestingly, as the last verse, he's adding something like this. Sariputtova panyaya silena upasamenacha yohi paragato bhikkhu esova paramo syati. Now you can see he had a great affection with Venerable Sariputta. So he had a great respect towards Venerable Sariputta, great gratitude towards Venerable Sariputta, even after passed away. Now he is mentioning about Venerable Sariputta to the Buddha. He is mentioning Venerable Sariputta is with great wisdom, he is with great virtues, with great peace. And whoever, any other monk trying to become the best, he can only reach as equal to Venerable Sariputta. He can't go beyond. Venerable Sariputta is the best. He is the role model. Actually, that mentioned by the Buddha also. So after mentioning that, so Buddha approves it. So Buddha definitely have understood who he is and understood it and approved it. And after being delighted, so this celestial being vanished. Now, after that, next day, so this particular incident is reported to the Sangha by the Buddha. So during yesterday night, a young, beautiful celestial being approached me. He was mentioning about this Jetanarama and he is explaining his delight. And all these verses, what he is mentioned, Buddha repeated. And the last verse also mentioned that he is particularly made a comment about Venerable Sariputta. Venerable Sariputta is the foremost. He is the best in the wisdom, with virtues, with peace. If any other monks trying to achieve it, he can only can become equal to him. So after this sermon was delivered to the Sangha, so Venerable Ananda was in the crowd. So immediately he said, Bhante, it could be householder Anathapindika. So through reasoning, so he recognized, because Venerable Ananda didn't have any psychic powers and all these things, but he got kind of an understanding, okay, this particular celestial being had a great affection to Venerable Sariputta, and he was appreciating the Sangha and about the Jetanarama, things are there. And yesterday night, this Anathapindika has passed away. Probably it could be Anathapindika. Then Buddha praised Venerable Ananda, mentioning, yes, that is true. So you have a great reasoning, you have a great understanding. It is Anathapindika. Now, this is how the sutta ends. Actually, there are various things that we can learn. One thing is that how even a Sotapanna, how even a great disciple, how even a great householder went through some severe suffering at the death moment. And another thing is how Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Ananda approached him and delivered a very deep Dhamma. And even with that painful situation, householder Anathapindika could understood that. He properly understand that. And that is why he really cried, because he understood the value of the Dhamma. Probably if he could have learned that beforehand, probably he might have further developed himself. That could be another reason. It is not mentioned in the Sutta. But anyway, the request made by Anathapindika is another thing, that even though the Dhamma is deep, there are some lay people who are with less dust, who are with less defilements in their minds, who are capable of understanding even the deep Dhamma. So that is the therefore Anathapindika request from the Sangha, do not just make any reservations for Dhamma, just preach the Dhamma even to lay people, even the deep Dhamma. There may be lay people, without hearing this kind of Dhamma, they may waste their time. The other thing is that even though the advice is given that when this householder Anathapindika was reborn, But if he could have done it 100%, then there is no rebirth. Like what we discussed as for the Venerable Channa. And some similar thing happened to Venerable Godika. Venerable Godika is another Arahant who has become an Arahant at the last moment, after death, during the death moment. So likewise, different incidents are there where we can closely analyze and see how some people actually were able to attain Arahantship at the death moment, and some couldn't, and some actually have attained before that. So etc. I mean, different situations are there. And on the other hand, so every place is mentioned, every aspect is mentioned, either with respect to elements, either with respect to sense bases, maybe internal, external, either with respect to say aggregates, in general talking about this life or this world and next world, and whatever you see, hear, sense, cognize, encounter, sought after, examined by the mind, everything is included. Advice is not to cling, not to attach, not allowing the consciousness to establish at any place. So this is something actually we should not have to wait till the death moment to do. So that's why, we need to learn this Dhamma. So how to maintain a mind without allowing consciousness to establish at any place. So that should be our aim. That should be our practice. Actually, we can't do that immediately. At the beginning, you can't do it immediately. So, say when you are doing Anapanasati, your mind is established on the breath. Maybe when you are doing walking meditation, your mind may be established on the contact. Without it, we can't do it, because you have to firm your mind. You have to focus your mind. So during first stages of our practice, so there's a kind of a focusing, there's a kind of a fixation. But for a purpose that we are doing it, and the mind first has to be well concentrated. And after that only we now do the investigation. Without stopping at the concentration, now we need to start the investigation. Investigations allow us to have a better understanding about different phenomena. Either if you are going through aggregates, either if you are going through sense bases, either if you are going through elements, whatever the way. So this investigation helps us to understand what would be the reality. So more the understanding, what would be the result? You are getting dispassion. You are getting disenchantment. Without understanding, without having what you call this Yathabhuta Jnana Dassana, what we discussed in the morning. So if you don't have proper understanding about these realities, so mind is not ready to let go. Mind is not ready to relinquish. You can't force your mind to let go. Rather, from our side, it's a matter of developing the wisdom so that the mind itself understands the impermanent nature. Mind itself understands the unsatisfactory nature. Mind itself understands the non-governable, non-self nature. With that kind of a wisdom, knowledge, mind automatically is willing to let go. The letting go would be natural. So once the letting go happen, then mind become unestablished. Consciousness become unestablished, at least for temporary, at least for few moments. So we need to do it again and again, achieve it again and again, reach there again and again, have to cultivate that state, have to be in that state, dwell in that state. And that is where we are at least trying to fulfill this teaching, what is mentioned in the Anathapindikovada Sutta. So that means beforehand, way before, we have to touch this temporary liberation. We have to touch this temporary freedom. We have to touch this non-grasping state of mind. So once we reach there, now we have, it's a matter of making it abundant, make it kind of prolonging it, enhancing it. So you are doing it at first maybe at your sitting session. Now you are prolonging it. You can do it for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, likewise. Now you are trying to do it at the walking session. Now you are trying to do it while, eating, while talking. So likewise, it's a matter of expanding it, consolidating it, so that the consciousness is not established at any place. So therefore, when we are doing such kind of practice, we are, in other way, we are not promoting any defilement. So you can't maintain this state if you are promoting any defilement. So in other way, we are slowly abandoning all the defilements, because the defilements are the ones withdrawing you from this state. If our minds are completely free from defilements, it has to be naturally at this state. So if the mind still has some lust, still has some anger, still has some hatred, delusion, etc., then somehow it get attached, somehow it get associated to anywhere. So the process therefore is, kind of multifaceted. So you are trying to maintain an unattached mind. In order to accomplish that, you have to abandon various defilements. You need to see how I-making, mind-making, this conceit happen, how mental proliferation happen. It's a kind of a continuous observation. You have to notice all these things and abandon all these attachments. So likewise, we are sort of strengthening the mind so that freedom of the mind is maintained. Liberated mind is maintained at that very moment. It's a kind of a momentary practice. Moment by moment we have to be vigilant. Moment by moment we have to take care of the mind, look after the mind, not allowing the mind to attach to anything. So the same sermon delivered to Venerable Householder Anathapindika, the yogi has to implement as much as possible. Okay, with that note, I like to conclude today's Dhamma sermon. So with this kind of deep Dhamma, so let's try our best without waiting the last moment. Yeah. There's a short note about sharing of merits. Day Danaya, Mr. and Mrs. Cabral, Priyantha Chandradeva and Chandrika. The merits gained from Danaya may help okay, Reverend Chandaratana Thero and all Dhamma friends to attain Nibbana early in this life. Also offer this merits to passed away parents and who are in need of merits. Theruvan Saranai. Okay, today also now we have gathered here, spent fair amount of time practicing Dhamma and again listening to Dhamma sermon and participating in Dhamma discussion. All the merits accrued using all these meritorious deeds, let's share with all the celestial beings, with all the past away relatives and whoever in need of merits. And let's wish these merits help us also to attain path, fruition, Nibbana. While keeping these good wishes in our mind, let's recite the traditional verses. Ettavata ca amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavata ca amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavata ca amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Akasattha ca bummattha devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu sasanang. Akasattha ca bummattha devanaga mahiddika anumoditva chirang rakkhantu desanang. Akasattha ca bummattha devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakkhantu mamparang. Idang vo ñātīnaṃ hotu sukitā huntu ñātayo. Idang vo ñātīnaṃ hotu sukitā huntu ñātayo. ඉදං වෝ ඥාතිනං හෝතු සුඛිතා හුන්තු ඥාතයෝ ඉමිනා පුඤ්ඤ කම්මේන මාමේ බාල සමාගමෝ සතං සමාගමෝ හෝතු යාව නිබ්බාන පත්තියා ඉමිනා පුඤ්ඤ කම්මේන මාමේ බාල සමාගමෝ සතං සමාගමෝ හෝතු යාව නිබ්බාන පත්තියා ඉමිනා පුඤ්ඤ කම්මේන මාමේ බාල සමාගමෝ සතං සමාගමෝ හෝතු යාව නිබ්බාන පත්තියා සාදු සාදු සාදු